and welcome to another episode of the Optimizing Mother podcast, where I interview mothers like you, dedicated, thoughtful, and always striving to grow. Together, we explore various perspectives and approaches in chinuch based on Torah and Chassidus. Please remember, for personal questions or unique situations, please consult your Rav or Mashpia. Now, I'm super excited to be sitting here with a dear friend, Mrs. Ruthie Sperlin. Hi, Ruthie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Ruthie is a mother, a safety kid mom, and a college teacher, as well as a teacher in Beis Rivka, which we're going to get to. And I'm really excited to be having this conversation with Ruthie today, specifically about how to talk to preteen and teenage girls about sensitive conversations, about their growth and maturity, and specifically relationships. So, you ready, Ruthie?
I'm all set. It's my first time on a podcast, so.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're really lucky to have you. So thanks for agreeing. So we're talking about having a conversation with your teenager, that's already a topic. So how do you think we could set the stage to having such a sensitive conversation with a teenage girl?
So let's back up a few steps. Number one, I'm not a professional. I am no expert in any way, shape, or form. I am just a mother trying to do her best, which I think most of us are. When it comes to talking to my kids, I would definitely say that I've evolved. I have an older generation of kids. I have a younger generation of kids. And I definitely did not communicate with my older generation of kids the way I do with my younger. Having said that, I would say first and foremost, any parenting class you go to, they're going to tell you, you can't set the stage for an important conversation. You want it, or it needs to try to happen a little bit organically. That you're not scripted. You wait for your daughter to come home from school telling you about the bad day she had. And, maybe she was disciplined for doing something. And, maybe it's in a relationship to something about this topic. And then you could take it from there. That's how I would say. I've never had a conversation that went really well with my kids where I was like, okay, sit down. We need to talk about this. Sometimes I had to. I didn't have a choice. But it wasn't optimal. Let's put it that way.
Got it. But even to have an organic conversation, you still have to have that relationship.
So having that relationship is something that you have to work on. It's something that like I said before, I've worked on it from my older generation to my younger generation. It's something that I changed in order to have that conversation. I gained knowledge. I gained experience. I gained perspective just from being a college teacher, from being a safety kid mom. All of those things helped me to be more comfortable to have the conversation. One of the things about being a safety kid mom is, we're well trained by Debbie Fox, who runs the organization of Safety Kid. And one of the things she says, which I find I've used in my life in so many different conversations, is when you're having these conversations, it has to be a peanut butter and jelly conversation. So what does that mean? The same way you would ask your child, do you want peanut butter and jelly or cream cheese? That's the same tone, the same way that you respond to anything that they tell you. Anything that, if it's a struggle or whatever it might be. No drama. Because drama will shut them down. Drama they'll make them maybe scared to talk. So peanut butter and jelly.
Got it. Okay, peanut butter and jelly. I love that. I'd love if we could also, just like you got knowledge, that is what empowered you. If we could empower the mothers to also feel comfortable with the language and the terminology so that they could feel empowered to have these conversations. So I guess take us back to the basics. You teach Yichud to 10th grade in Beis Rivka?
Yeah.
So can you tell us, what are some of the things you teach them that, if they hear it from school and from their mothers, it could be helpful, each one coming with their perspective and an ability to really answer what's on a girl's heart?
So I was approached I think this is my fourth year doing it, to come to Beis Rivka and teach Hashkafa of Yichud. I am not teaching Hilchos Yichud. I think in Beis Rivka, they get that in 8th grade and in 11th grade.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm not doing
the word Hashkafa. You're talking about the Hashkafa.
I'm talking about the Hashkafa of Yichud. What does that mean? Well, first, let's understand that I was gifted a beautiful curriculum that was created by Mrs. Sara Blau, and she taught this subject for a few years, and then she graduated past it, and she gave it to me. And I tweaked it, and I made it my own. And I come into Beis Rivka 10th grade. And basically, what is Hashkafa Yichud? And in a nutshell, but it's so much bigger than this, and we can get into that. Hashkafa Yichud is, in a nutshell, why are boys and girls attracted to each other? Where it comes from in a source in Torah. We do talk to Torah sources, and then we talk about why it's not a good idea for right now in their life. and we delve into it. It's about 6 classes this year. Actually, there was so much interaction in the classes that I didn't have enough time to finish, and I felt bad. I really needed more time.
What are some of the questions that they have, and how you answer them?
So we have to step back, and we have to first understand, how do we approach it? So we approach it from the beginning of Adam and Chava, and how did Hashem create man and woman, and then as you grow, how your body changes, and why at that point in time do these feelings start. So we get into that. So usually the biggest questions that we have, the greatest discussions that we have, is when we get to the concept of borders and boundaries. And, we always have a very interesting conversation, because I give them an example. I try to make the examples relevant. So we talk about their phones and filters on their phones. And should I have and I ask them a really cute question. I say, okay, I want you guys to answer this question non-verbally. Raise your hand if you think you should have 0 filters on your phone, just by raising up your hand. And maybe every single class, I teach 7 classes, 2 to 3 girls in every class raise their hand. And then I ask, how many of you think you should have some filters on your phone? And then the rest of the class raises their hand. And then we get into a whole discussion about that. Well, I can be trusted. My parents trust me. I have a good relationship with my parents. And I do agree with that. I do believe that having a good, open relationship with your daughters and your sons is very, very important to have any conversation. And that takes work. But when they talk about trusting themselves, we get into that. Like, a lot of people get into things on their phone and on the internet that they didn't mean to. It was by accident. It was a mistake. And that always sparks a fun, lively conversation. It also, when we talk about, there's a lot of different subjects that we get into.
Got it. So you take them all the way back to Adam and Chava.
Right.
So can you say it in words? Like, what do you say to the girls? It's normal to be attracted to a boy. Like, how do you normalize their struggle, but in a refined way? I'm sure there's different levels in the class. How do you talk about what girls are going through, and how do you address it?
So when I start out the class, I actually start out with, just like my introduction, is I explain to them who I am, and I'm a college teacher. And I tell them that I'm a safety kid mom. And most of them remember the rules of safety from when they were in Bishop Elementary. And then I tell them that I'm here to talk to them about Hashkafa of Yichud. And I tell them, I said, I'm here to talk to you about relationships between boys and girls, why it's natural to have the feelings that you might have. And then we're going to explore that. And then I tell them, I actually go back and I tell them, think about the rules of safety. And some of them remember A, B, C, D, and they remember it. And I tell them, think about those rules of A, B, C, D of safety as kids. If you take those into your teenage years, how they're actually able to help you when it comes to Yichud, situations of Yichud, and Hashkafa of Yichud, right? Bring a friend, never be alone. It's the same idea, right? Check first. Is this a good, when you're little, you check first with your parent. So either check in with yourself, or check in with a friend, or check in with your parents. Should I be doing this? And all of them are like a little light bulb goes off in their head, like, wow, I never thought that I could use it as an adult, as a teenager. And then I tell them, as a college teacher, I have a very unique perspective. I have a unique perspective of seeing girls who have found their better half. And some of them have had relationships in the past as teenagers, and they express to me and they talk to me how having that relationship as a teenager didn't help them. It didn't make their dating life easier. And they wish they would have known more. And I said, that's my unique perspective. Why me over somebody else? And that's what I tell them. I said, this is something that I can give you. And I also tell them this in the beginning, the middle, the end. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm really not. I am here simply to give you the information so that if you find yourself in this situation with these feelings, what you can do and the knowledge you need to have. And then I say one more thing, sorry. And I tell them, I said, it's very normal for some of you not to have these feelings at all right now. And it's okay. That's normal. But guess what you could do? You could help a sibling that's struggling. You could help a friend that's struggling.
So what are some tools that you give them if someone has feelings and they don't know what to do with them? What do you tell them?
So I talk to them a lot about, what are you doing in your life every day, right? Do you go home from school and scroll on your phone? Or do you have hobbies? Do you have habits? Do you exercise? Right? It applies to this. Like, you're watching yourself. Keep yourself healthy. What do you love to do? Do it. It's a healthy, Torah thing to do, to distract yourself in a way that works for you. find what you love. If it's music, if it's dance, if it's exercise, if it's art, if it's baking, do it. Scrolling your phone doesn't help.
Mm-hmm. Any other things like from Torah or Chassidus that you bring up?
So we do talk about, we get into, and this is why I feel bad, because we had so many interesting conversations that I didn't get to this in every class, was we talk a lot about Perek Chav Zayin Tanya, how Perek Chav Zayin, interestingly enough, is like the only one that I've ever really studied in depth, which talks about worrying and invasive thoughts. And I happen to be a worrier, so that's one of the reasons why I appreciate this parak. And we talk about what the Alter Rebbe says to do when those thoughts, get in your way, and how, I ask them, I say, when you have a test and you tell your mother you're never going to pass, and your mother tells you, don't worry, does that help you? And they're all like, no. I said, your mother tells you, well, go for a jog. What can I do to help you? Well, telling you not to worry doesn't help. So what does the Alter Rebbe say about worrying thoughts, invasive thoughts, inappropriate thoughts? So Alter Rebbe says, and I'm not an expert in Perek Chav Zayin Tanya or Tanya at all, so and give me some leeway here, but basically what the Alter Rebbe says is, when the thought comes into your mind, push the thought away and replace it with something else. And just the simple act of pushing the thought away and replacing it with something else is actually elevating that negative thought. And we get into that. We get into how to do that and what that means. And a lot of them appreciate it coming from a Hasidic source. They do.
It's amazing what the Alter Rebbe does in Chav Zayin and then Chav Ches. He literally takes something that would make someone feel bad about themselves. Oh, they had an inappropriate thought, and turns it on its head. And the Alter Rebbe says, you should be happy. You should be besimcha because you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah of leisasu achrei einechem, of not straying after your eyes.
Right. We talk about that. We actually.
It's like the Alter Rebbe takes something that maybe a teenage girl might be embarrassed. She had an inappropriate thought, and you're like, not only is it not embarrassing, you're human. You're normal, and by not giving into it, it's a mitzvah.
I think the Alter Rebbe also says that a tzaddik can't even do this.
Yeah. Right? So, don't be so arrogant to think that you wouldn't have these thoughts. It's unbelievable. It's so relevant. It's so practical. And, if you're a human, you're going to have some form. Just like you gave an example. If you're not going to have this type of inappropriate thought, you can have a different type of invasive thought. And the Alter Rebbe is basically saying that rather than fighting it, which doesn't work, right? The famous thing, don't think about a pink elephant. So you're thinking about a pink elephant. Instead of fighting it and resisting it, it's like, okay, Hashem is giving me an opportunity to transfer this, to do the mitzvah, to, it's amazing. We're so lucky.
We are.
We're lucky to have the Chassidus.
I find it such great Hashkafa practice. I'm not a Baki in Tanya at all, but the one Perek in Tanya that I kind of know a little bit is Perek Chav Zayin. And that's what's relevant to this conversation, to what I'm teaching, which is great for me.
Right. And it fits right in.
It fits right in.
So what are some other topics in Yichud that you talk about? So you normalize the struggle from a Torah perspective of Adam Chava. You tell them that they, to get busy, etc. What else do you
So we start from the very beginning. So like I said, we start from Adam Chava, understanding how we were created as one, and then we were separated. And how are we different from all the other creations? Well, we're one half, we each have a half of a soul of each other. And we talk about what the Rebbe says actually about how they're like, what? Impossible. I have to first explain what that is. The Rebbe says how we actually can affect each other's, the other half of our neshama, like in a subconscious way. And where do we have a source for this? In benching, the exact pasuk is escaping me right now. And where we talk, shechasamta b'v'sareinu, and we all say in benching, shechasamta b'v'sareinu, that was sealed upon your flesh, and that's referring to bris milah. But we as girls didn't have a bris milah, so the Rebbe uses this as a source for how we can actually affect the other half of our neshama, because we're connected. We say it every day in benching to prove that we're connected. And then we do start. The first 2 or 3 are more about Torah. We talk about the forbidden relationships. We don't go into them in depth, but we talk about where they come from. We talk about lo yisikrevu means what is, and we talk about negia, being shomer negia, and what does that mean? And they're all, many of them are I'm not going to say taken aback, but they're when I talk about the fact that negia is not just like muksa. It's a level above, right? We don't.
It's not just preventative.
It's an actual mitzvah in itself, exactly. And some of them are like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's like, chicken and milk. Do we eat chicken and milk? They're like, no, of course not. So I said, negia is the same thing. That always is generally brings about some interesting questions. And we talk about some sources about what we're not supposed to do, like and like what you should, and why it's not just for men, it's also for women. How we also as women, because ultimately we have to watch what we listen to. We have to watch what we watch actually on our phones. Why? Because
the heart wants what the eye sees.
Not only that, because as women, ultimately, what do? We carry within us a chilek elokah. And we might think we're exempt because we don't have the same levels of desires as men, and they have to watch more what they see. But the Mittler Rebbe brings down how, as girls, we also have to, because when that chilek elokah is within us, we have to be very careful.
You know, you mentioned about girls being surprised about Nagia. I remember when I was in school, girls were surprised to learn when we learned Yichud that it could apply to people that you think are family members, like a brother-in-law. They're like, what? You suddenly realize how halacha treats people that you think are family, almost like you still have to be careful.
So it's funny because we do get into some interesting conversations that some of them do have a hard time with. So, for example, we do get into a little bit, and Sara and I and Rifki together worked on this. We do get into a little bit of tznius. I don't want to make the whole class about tznius. We do get into that because of the points of Hashkafa Yichud that we talk about. Do not put a stumbling block before a blind person. And we talk about what that means in a practical way. Well, what's the common question I get in every single class? Why do I have to watch what I wear because someone else is going to have a problem? Why can't I just live my life? And we get into it. We talk about it. You're not living on an island. You're part of you're part of a community. And yeah, we have to always take that as it's a responsibility. But we also talk about, guess what? Boys have a lot of things that they're not allowed to do also. And they're shocked to hear that. Shocked to hear that the boys have a whole list of things that they're not allowed to do.
It's interesting though, because as much as tznius is about the responsibility to other people, it's not just about that.
No, there are six parts to tznius. One of them is shivisi Hashem l'negdi.
Exactly, right.
It's about your relationship with Hashem. And one of the things that we get into, and we talk about a little bit, is I say, and it gets a little bit sensitive because I asked the girls, I said, forget about the man on the street, the boy on the street. What about the boy in your house, your brother-in-law? And some of them take it thoughtfully, and some of them are blown away by the fact that could be a reality.
It's probably, Ruthie, the first time like somebody's having these kind of conversations with these girls in a mature way and acknowledging the fact that it could be hard for them.
Yeah, to a certain degree it is. A lot of them, so like I said, some of them do have really remarkable, open conversations with their parents, and I think it's great. And I do say, and I say this all the time, I say this as a college teacher, as from someone from a different generation, how this generation, they are one up on my generation and communication. They're pretty good communicators. Their parents are pretty good communicators. My generation was a generation of stuff it down and move on with your day. And it's, we see now that that's not the healthiest way. And yeah, I think that they have that. And I think that as a parent, what can you do? Again, you have to keep your eyes peeled, see what your girls are doing, see what your boys are doing, and, try to be on top of, if they're not keeping themselves busy or they don't know what to do, give them something to do maybe.
How do you answer a girl who says, like, she's 14 years old, her hormones are raging, like, you expect me to wait till I'm 20? Like, it's so hard. Like, how do you answer that question?
So first of all, it's so hard. Okay, I recognize that. But I really we talk about, some of the girls are really very, very intelligent, like well-read. We talk about when your brain finishes developing. And they most of them, 25, 26. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, do you know what you're missing? Do you know what you haven't developed yet? And some prefrontal cortex. I'm like, okay, what's in your prefrontal? And what part of your brain development is there? And we talk about impulse control. And we talk about your ability to control yourself. And whether you like it or not, that's a fact. So I'm not telling you that you're not going to have the feelings. I'm just telling you why it's not a good idea for you right now. And when you occupy yourself with other things that you like, with friends, I actually tell them this. I tell them that now at this point in your life, you're allowed to be selfish. Your development is about you. And everybody really understands one point. When I tell them, I said, when you are in a relationship with a boy at this age, 15, 16, understand that you're putting yourself aside for that relationship. you're not making you the priority. You're making him the priority. And that's just what happens. And you want to develop yourself before you're having a relationship. A lot of them understand that. But one of the big questions I got this year was interesting. Was, what about friends? How do you have friendships? But should you be selfish and not have friends? I'm like, no. But it was very, very interesting because I'll never forget this. I went with my daughter a few years ago, quite a while ago, for a well visit. The doctor was talking to her and how's school, how old are you? She was a teenager. Do you have friends? Yeah. And he threw out a question. He said to her, what's a good friend? And my daughter looked at me. I was like, you tell him what's a good friend. And he said, a good friend is someone who keeps you out of trouble. And it was such a good one-liner. Like, yeah, you want your friend. And this is what we talk about also in Safety Kid. Like, you want to be with a friend who, when your mother says to be home at 8:00, tells you got to go home. You want to be with a friend who's good for you. And how do you recognize that? Well, what am I doing when I'm with her? So again, I told them when it comes to relationship we always go back to the relationship with boys and girls, but we can't help making it relevant to what they're experiencing right now.
Do you feel, that, let's say a girl's sitting in your class and she is, it's not just hormones. She's desperate for the attention. She doesn't have the inherent self-value or self-worth, so she does want it from a boy. Do you touch that at all? Like how a girl could develop her inherent core so she shouldn't need this external validation that isn't good for her?
So no one's going to tell me that in class. No one's going to divulge that. And I understand why. Some girls do come to me after class and speak to me. And I'm not a professional, so I could tell them the same thing that I said before. Find the things that you enjoy doing and make those a priority in your life. What I can imagine as a non-professional, giving them anything else. Like some of the girls, so what's one of the things we talk about, but this doesn't speak to the whole lot of the girls. And one of the things we talk about is bringing Torah into your life, right? So what does that mean? I'm not telling them to go learn Tanya and you're going to be cured, because they're not going to relate to that. But one of the things I try to point out is when you let Torah in just a little bit, it's amazing how when you open up just that little trickle in, it lets in more.
You're saying just a little.
If it's something small, like, again, a lot of them don't relate to that. They don't want to hear that. I get it. But the ones that do, and on the same token, I tell them, when you close yourself off completely and you don't let Torah in at all, if it's just listening to one podcast a week, it actually stuffs the drain. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't let anything in. When you close yourself off from it completely, nothing's coming in. When you let a little bit open, more can flood in, can come in, and more and more and more and more.
Which really is the actual answer. Like the more you're connected to Torah, that's what gives you the support,
right.
I
think so. But some of them at this stage in their life, that might not be what they want to hear. So that's why I tell them there are other things that will also keep you healthy and grounded.
Right.
Some of you it's Torah, some of you it's not.
Do you talk about the idea of Ena Petrapis La Reis, that this can happen anyone, any situation?
So absolutely, that's actually one whole part that we talk about, and I explain to them what it means. And the example that I start with, so first let's explain what's Ena Petrapis La Reis. Ena Petrapis La Reis is loosely translated, no one is guaranteed and no one is immune from the desire for forbidden relationships. And I give them an example. I tell them, why does Bill, who is an alcoholic, who hasn't had a single drop of alcohol in 25 years, why does he stand up at Alcoholics Anonymous and say, hi, my name is Bill and I'm an alcoholic? It's so not fair. It's been 25 years and he still has to call himself an alcoholic. And I asked the girls, I said, why do you think that is? So most of them get it. They're like, because the minute he says he's not, he might fall off the wagon. So the same holds true when it comes to these things. The minute when it says no one's immune or guaranteed from this, they mean everybody. It means everyone. We talk about
not just teenagers, by the way.
Not just teenagers, absolutely. I tell them that. I said, no one is immune. The minute you say that, the minute we go back to phones, the minute you say that my parents trust me, and I don't need any filters on my phone, that's when you might accidentally be somewhere, see something you didn't mean to see, and then you open the floodgates. And when we talk about Ena Petrapis La Reis, we talk about the forbidden relationships, I ask them, quiz. I'm like, does anybody know when throughout the year, besides on its regular Torah portion, do we read about the forbidden relationships? And I get everything. I Purim, Pesach, Shavuos. I'm like, no. Every class, there's one or two girls who know the answer. They're like, Yom Kippur. I'm like, okay, when in Yom Kippur? And I tell them, it's Mincha. I said, where are you? Where's your brain? Mincha Yom Kippur. Where are you?
It's the holiest day of the year.
It's the holiest day of the year. You're already fasting. It's almost over. You and me, we might be counting the pages till it's over, right? But it's at the end, right? You're in, for many people, you're in the holiest place you're going to be the whole year. And in Mincha of Yom Kippur, we're talking about the forbidden relationships. Why then? And I answer them, Ein apartropis lareis. No one is immune, even at this holiest time of your life, of your year. Torah is reminding us. No one is guaranteed against those desires. Nobody.
How do you, I'm curious of girls that ask this question, but like, what about for a girl who like things are normal, whether it's in her family or in her social circle, and like it's normal for, whether it's teenage girls and boys or families to spend time together, or in the summer, like sometimes a girl wants to do better, but the people in her environment, doesn't lend itself to that so easily. How do you empower girls to like own up to their decisions?
You meaning in families in general? Like in your own family? Like, or just in general?
Yeah, maybe cousins, maybe.
So I do get cousin questions a lot, and I don't want to mess with anybody's family dynamic. That I don't want to do. That's on the parents and that's on the families. That's not my role. My role is to give you the wisdom to know when you're in a situation that's not comfortable. One of the things I do tell them, I said, you've been taught since you're 3 years old to not turn the light on Shabbos. You're taught since you're a little kid to go to a grocery and check for the Hashem. That muscle of Shabbos, that muscle of kashrus, you've been building your whole life. This is a muscle, this muscle of attraction. You haven't really built it. You have to work on yourself. You have to build it and make it stronger. You also have to be aware. One of the things we talk about in safety kit, I don't really talk about it in these situations so much, in this class so much, is recognizing how you feel. How does something make you feel? So while, yes, there's okay and there's not okay, right? So even as a kid, right, you had an uncomfortable feeling. I want you to recognize that it's uncomfortable. So and I talk to them about attraction and hormones, and your hormones are raging. I'm going to ask them, I said, what happens when your hormones are raging? And they're like, you lose your common sense. You lose your seichel. I'm like, so what should you do? Because I don't have the answers. I said, find somebody that you can talk to. If it's your mother, if it's your older sister, find somebody who can help you. You don't want to live in that yourself and then feel bad about yourself. But it's not a muscle that you're used to using. And the more you use it, the more you use your self-control muscle in this area, the stronger it will get.
Amazing. I love it.
And then you use that also as a married woman too.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some other topics you cover? Because we mentioned, going back to, to the way Hashem made us, mentioned Ein Apotropos Lareis. What other topics come up in your Hashkafa Yichud?
So what we talk about a lot is development. Not a lot, but I would like to talk about it more, but just on a simple, basic fact, we talk about how the way you develop, right, is really important. You don't want to skip stages or miss stages. We also we have a whole class on, I give them an index card, and I tell them, put a line down the middle and write male on one side, female on the other side, and give me what you think are either differences between the two or innate tendencies that we're born with. And some of the girls are like, I don't know anything. I'm like, just give yourself a minute to think. And some of them are quite intuitive. Some of them are pretty amazing. Some of them are basic as our bodies are different. And some of them are as deep as women's intuition. And almost all of them agree with me that women have an intuition. And we go through, I say, listen, all of these are generalization, that women are more emotional and men are tougher. And we talk about it. Yes, they're generalizations. What does it mean? I said, a man can be tough, not because he doesn't feel things, just because as the man of the house, he needs to, I guess the word is be there to protect his family. And we get into the concept very, very quickly of mashpia makabel, and I explain it to them. And because what I don't want them to walk away with, and this is important, is to never ever feel or think that a woman as a makabel is less than or weaker. And we go into that, and I tell them absolutely not. And I said, raise your hand if, when your mother walks in the door in a bad mood, or you walk in the house and your mother's in a bad mood, what happens to your house? Almost universally, the entire class is like, no, it is not fun. Right? And some of them, it's their fathers too. Granted, the mother is the ikaris habayis, and we talk about what that means. We talk about it, the roots of the home. And I try to bring that in also, that we're not less than being a makabel. And then I tell them, and this is fascinating, I ask them a question. I say, okay, before you answer, 5 seconds, think. And I say, I'm the mashpia in this relationship. I'm mashpia as a teacher. You are the makabel in this relationship, the student. In our relationship right now, me to you, I said, who is holding most of the power? So there's always one girl who cannot think for 5 seconds. Like, you. And I say, wait, think 5 seconds. And they all think, and they're like, is it us? And I talked to them about it. I said, really, it is. If I'm not giving the information to you properly, I'm not doing my job. And we go through that because I think it's important for them to recognize what feminism did to the world. And another big thing is just recognizing how the outside world is influencing their life and the way they think. I could not just say I could be there forever, but there's so much to explore. And then we talk about so we take we go from the differences between men and women, boys and girls. We talk about, okay, now that we know, and I talk to them, you're different from the womb. You're different from, a female heartbeat in the womb beats faster than a male heartbeat.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I know because my doctor used to guess what I was having. She wouldn't tell me. I didn't take sonograms, so she would guess. And she was pretty right.
Based on the heartbeat.
Based on the heartbeat. Almost. She was right pretty much. Not every time, but most of the time. Your bones are different. The way you fight is different. The way everything is different. And all those things they can relate to. And then I talk about how we don't want to skip stages. We talk about how, I give an example of a child who goes straight from sitting to walking and doesn't crawl. I was like, okay, I'm like, that child needs to have physical therapy. They're like, why?
He missed the crawling stage.
He missed the crawling stage. What do you get in the crawling stage? Coordination. There's a major coordination happening there. And, I said, you don't want to skip stages.
And what's the stage that you don't want them to skip?
So if you're dating at 16, you're skipping the development of working on yourself. Of having better impulse control, of focusing on yourself, not on somebody else. Well, what about, I know somebody who married the boy they dated in 12th grade. I'm like, every grade has one. That's what we call the outlier. And I have no answer to that.
Right. And also, first of all, 12th grade is already, they're 18. You're talking to the 10th graders.
Correct. We talk also about just Shlomo HaMelech and how we did that test with the boys and the girls. I think before the boys hit puberty, they had them all dressed the same. And he asked the boys, and he gave out like nuts and fruit. And he asked the boys, when they passed by Shlomo HaMelech, they put out their hand one way, and the girls didn't. Shlomo put it into their hands. He was able to tell who was a boy, who was a girl. And he asked them to go to the river to pick up pebbles. And the boys put the pebbles, I think they put it in their tunics, and they picked up their tunics, and they came, and the girls just only brought what they could hold in their hands. We're different. And it's okay that we're different. And we have to recognize that we're different.
Wow. Okay. So I think we covered a lot of topics today. How would you sum up this conversation? In other words, what would you want mothers who are new to this, or either, have already daughters but want to grow? How would you sum up what's important for us to impart to girls in this generation, especially? What is so important when it comes to these ideas of kreva, of closeness, of relationships, of all kinds of different girls and where they come from, and just the way Hashem made us.
I go back to what I said a few times, and it's really the bottom line. The bottom line is, number one, like we said in the beginning, hopefully you'll find and create the opportunities to speak to your daughter. If it's when you're, out in a restaurant, or if it's, like I said, when she comes home from school, or whatever that might be. try to find those opportunities. Like I said, don't create them. Hopefully they'll be organic, and it's important. I would also say that it's not always easy to talk about this. And I think that what we really want to express, and like I said, my expertise is coming from, like I said, being a mother, being a safety kid mom, and being a college teacher. And
by the way, Ruthie put her fingers in quotations when she said expertise. No one could see you doing
that.
No
expertise. I have zero expertise. That's my point. Zero. I am not a professional in any way, shape, or form. I would say that to validate what they're feeling, to let them know that what they're feeling is normal. We give an example of one of the things I tell the girls. I said, I was in a restaurant with my husband years ago, and it wasn't so full, the restaurant. There was like a table full of a bunch of single boys, and there was a table full of a bunch of single girls, and there was me and my husband, and there was a family with like 4 kids. And the boys were done eating, and they had a ton of leftovers that they didn't touch, and they very generously gifted their food to one table in the restaurant. And I asked the girls, I said, who'd they gift their food to? Every single girl raises their hand and said, of course, the table with the girls. Of course, right? That dynamic is there. That push and pull of kriva is there. That chemistry, that attraction is there, and it's normal. It's normal. You don't worry if that's your feelings. Like I said, validate, let them know that they're normal. But again, with the tools and with the knowledge of a little bit of what I said today, maybe we understand that it's normal, but now is not the time. And you could be doing yourself a disservice when you do this at this time. You really want, work on your friendships, work on yourself, find what you love, do that. You don't want to make yourself less than for somebody else right now. We talk about what's the difference between infatuation and love. And I tell them, I said, infatuation, we go into it, I said, infatuation is about what can you do for me? Love is about what can I do for you?
Oh, wow. Infatuation is what can you do for me?
Like, what are you giving to me? Like,
right? Like that high.
Yeah.
And love is what can I do for you?
That's
and that's marriage.
That's marriage.
And
so they're like, so wait, somebody's suddenly 22 and all this is I said, it's more clear than it was when you were 16. You don't have it all worked out, but
you're ready to go into it with long-term commitment.
When you go into dating, I'm dating for marriage, your whole outlook is different. We talk about it, I said, and they all agree. This is funny. They all agree with me. I tell them, I said, when a boy is dating at 16, what's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth thing he's thinking about when he meets a girl or sees a girl? And they're all like, her looks. And I say, a girl, when she's 16, she's dating a boy. Okay, number 1 is looks. Number 2 is looks. What's number 3, 4, 5, and 6? What's his personality? Right, and we talk about how does he make me feel, and is he sensitive? I said, it's important to recognize, and I tell them, I said, go and, we don't want to be in this relationship. I give them that knowledge, and very few of them disagree with certain basic premises. A lot of what I say that they do disagree with, but very few of them.
Right, and is that what you want to be valued at, just your looks?
Right.
Or do you want to be that neshama, that person?
And as you get older and you're dating for marriage, you're looking for, yes, even the Rebbe said, attraction is important. But that's just one small part.
Right. Well, there's Mashiachas Halev, and then there's, when you're going for dating, you're going for values. Are we on the same page? What kind of home do we want to have? The conversations are deeper. And it's not like, how do I get them to do anything for me?
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, I wish all of us mothers, teachers, and educators had tzlacha in really imparting our values over into our daughters, and all different levels, that they should really be open to allowing Torah into their life, and to recognizing that Torah and Chassidus, Hashem literally made us. So the book that he gave us knows us best. Knows what's the best for us, and he really gives us the tools in Torah to overcome any of our challenges.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I'll just say one more thing, and that is one girl at the end of class, she came over to me. She's a very, very well-read scientific girl. She was using scientific terminology that I never heard of. And she said to me, I wish you would have brought more scientific sources. And I said to her, I'm so sorry. I brought Torah sources. Not I'm sorry. I take away that I'm sorry. I bring Torah sources. I don't Science is not my field of expertise. Neither is Torah necessarily, but in this topic, my sources are based in Torah. And if Hashem gives us the framework, we do our best to make it work.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ruthie.
You're
and
welcome.
I give us all a bracha with hatzlacha in all the kids that we're educating. So thank you for listening to another episode of the Optimizing Mother podcast. Share this with your friends, subscribe, and until next time.
Thank you. Wait, I'm calling you. Okay, I'm coming in.
Okay. Now I have to go to the chinuch office.